I want to welcome you to the Engineer Your Success podcast. My name is Dr. James Bryant, your host for this show. This podcast provides tools, tips, and techniques to help you achieve success both in business and in life. It is my pleasure to guide you on your journey to engineer your success by helping you design and live a life where you can win at work and at home. I really hope that you're having a great week this week. One of the things that I want to remind our listening audience of is be grateful. So just take a moment. Even at the start of this podcast episode, I'm grateful for you for tuning in. I'm grateful for the download. I'm grateful for the likes on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. I am just grateful. And as you practice an attitude of gratitude, as you practice being grateful, it will change your outlook on life. Do bad things happen? Yes. Do things happen to me and to my loved ones that we don't want to happen? Absolutely. But it's working through those things and finding things that you can be grateful for. I didn't intend to start off the podcast episode this way, but I just really felt that someone needed a reminder about being grateful and the power of gratitude. So this week, we're going to continue the conversation that we started off last week. So last week, we focused on chasing the habit and not the goal. So we talked about just the importance of habits, the difference between setting goals and establishing habits. And we talked about the concept of keystone habits and the habit loop. Now, these aren't concepts that I've developed. These are things that comes from The Power of Habit and Atomic Habits, very popular books that are out there on these topics that drop so much wisdom that a whole year's worth of podcasts would not be able to contain them. But they did a great job. Both of those books do a great job of really setting out some of the things that you can do if you want to implement habits in your life. If you want to implement habits that will help transform you from where you are to where you want to go. So some of the key takeaways from last week in terms of leveraging the power of habits. One is observe your current habits. It's hard to change what you're not aware of. So we suggested that you take note of your existing habits and their corresponding cues and the rewards so that you can gain more insight into your current behavior patterns and identify areas of improvement. And ways that you can observe your current habits, you can keep a habit journal, set aside some time for reflection. You can use some habit tracking apps. It's all about creating awareness about your behavior and your activities and what you're doing throughout your day. Another thing we talked about was choose a keystone habit. So in this definition, a keystone habit really is a habit that you believe will have a significant positive impact on your life and that it aligns with your goals. So focus on developing this habit first, because as you develop that habit, as you grow in that area, it will lead to improvements into other areas. And the last tip that we had from last week was to replace or modify the habit loop. So you want to analyze the habit loop for your chosen habit, the thing that you want to change, and then see what do you need to do to actually make that change. How do you interrupt the current loop and then input the new habit as a part of reorganizing or modifying that loop? Again, check out episode 94 for more information about what we did last week. You will not regret it. But we're going to continue the discussion this week and do a deeper dive into some strategies for creating sustainable habits. And we're going to explore how can you overcome some of the more common challenges that people face when they are developing a new habit. So in terms of how to create sustainable habits, my first suggestion here would be to start small and then build on your successes. When you're trying to establish something new, it's really easy to overreach, right? It's really easy to say, I want to do this much and look at the whole thing. But if you really want to establish your success in creating a new habit, start small. So begin with something that is small, manageable. Once you've successfully integrated that into your routine, then you gradually build on that to create a more substantial habit. So if you wanted to start reading a book a week, that may be what you want to do, but what's a habit that you can do to get you closer to there every day? You can start reading 5 minutes a day and then gradually increase the duration of your reading until you're more comfortable, until you are making more progress towards your goal. And this feeds into one of the other tips, which is focus on consistency rather than intensity. So consistently practicing a habit, even if it's a small action, is much more important than engaging in intense but sporadic bursts of activity. Consistency helps to reinforce the habit and make it more likely to stick. Consistency is key, I think, in any area where you want to achieve sustained success. We're going to talk about this concept in the next few weeks, but there's a real difference between trying and training. But I don't want to give away what we're going to talk about there, but just keep that in mind as we come back in a few weeks and we talk about that, the difference between trying and training. You can use another step for how to create some sustainable habits is use the habit stacking and then look at your environment. So habit stacking involves connecting a new habit to an existing one, kind of what we talked about, changing your habit loop. But the whole goal is to make it easier to remember to integrate that into your new routine. Environmental design or changing your environment really refers to organizing your surroundings to make it more conducive for you to perform the desired habit. So for example, I think I've talked about this a few times on the podcast. If I don't want to eat sweets, if I don't want to eat cake or pies or other things, then part of my environmental design is to make sure that those things are not here in the house. If there's certain activities or triggers that you have and you are aware of those triggers because like we talked about in last week's episode, you're noting what those habits are, you're noting those triggers and you're aware of them, you can begin to look at, are there some things that I need to change in my environment to help me practice this habit daily? If you struggle with, say, practicing mindfulness or meditation, you could stack the habit with your morning coffee routine. You can say that I'm going to create this space and time for my meditation or mindfulness practice before I have my morning cup of coffee and kind of link those two things together. These strategies are not foolproof, but they will help you to create sustainable habits that will contribute to your long-term success and your well-being. Because what we're talking about is sustained success. How we got on this topic really was, how do you create sustained success after you have accomplished your goal? And once you've accomplished your goal, you have to have these habits and these other things that are there to help keep you moving forward. The next overall topic that we're going to talk about is overcoming challenges in habit formation. So we're going to look to address some of these common challenges and obstacles that we all face when it comes to forming a new habit, as well as to provide just a few practical tips for overcoming them. So some of the big examples are lack of motivation or lack of discipline. You'll hear people say that, well, it's hard for me to do this because I'm not motivated to do it. Here's the thing. Your motivation has absolutely nothing to do with it. Part of starting small, you don't need motivation to start small. And you don't need enough motivation to actually finish the race or finish the project of what you're trying to do. You just need enough to start. And that's the key. You don't need a lot. You need to start. And so part of how you build that, part of how you connect that in terms of motivation is you establish your strong why for your habit. So if you're understanding the deeper reasons behind your desire to develop a habit, that can help you stay motivated or cause that motivation for what you want to do. So if you want to exercise more, then remind yourself of the long-term health benefits and increased energy levels that come with regular physical exercise that come with eating healthy. Think about who you want to be. Think about your future self, and think about not only your future self, but how when you make the right choice today, it's going to help you today. See, that's the thing about right choices. They help you today as well as tomorrow. Another big reason for people that comes up when we're talking about forming new habits is procrastination. I don't want to do it. I know I need to do it. We'll see all kinds of excuses. And we did a Engineer Success on-ramp. We've done a few on eliminating procrastination. I'll put a link in the show notes to the video for one of the previous on-ramps that we've done if you want to get more information on overcoming procrastination. But one of the things that we talk about there in terms of how to get over it is really breaking your habit or what you want to achieve into much smaller steps. They become more manageable, because when a task seems too daunting, it's really easy to put it off. It's really easy to just become overwhelmed and say it's too many things to do, so I'm not going to do it. So when you break it down into those smaller tasks, those smaller pieces, you really reduce that mental resistance and you make it easier to get started. So if you want to establish, again, that reading habit, if you want to establish a journaling habit, some people may want to start a journaling practice, but they say, I'm not going to sit there and I'm not going to write 5 pages a day. I don't have an hour to be able to put to doing that. Great. You don't need an hour. How about you start with 5 minutes? Better yet, how about you start your journaling practice with 5 bullet points for what you're grateful for on this day? It doesn't need to be big, but again, small, consistent steps will get you closer than not taking any steps at all. And then you also have this perfectionism or fear of failure. So, people don't necessarily want to take on the habit because they think it's not perfect. I'm not going to be able to do it to the best of my abilities. Therefore, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to be able to, I'm just not going to be able to do it to the best of my abilities. So I'm not going to do it. And there's failure. There's really fear of failure there. And so overcoming that, you really want to embrace the ideal of progress, not perfection. Recognize that developing a habit is a process and it's normal. It's a normal experience. Setbacks are going to happen along the way. So instead of striving for perfection, focus on making gradual improvements and learning from any mistakes. And remember, the key to successful habit formation is consistency, not perfection. So by addressing these common challenges, you'll be better equipped to maintain healthy habits that contribute to your long-term success and well-being. So here are some other things that I came up with in thinking about some of the top 10 challenges that people are facing when it comes to new habit formation. We've talked about lack of motivation. Another one is procrastination. We mentioned fear of failure. Number 4 of what I have is unrealistic expectations. And so you're setting overly ambitious goals or expecting immediate results. And that can lead to disappointment when stuff doesn't happen as quickly as you think it should happen. And then you are abandoning the habit altogether. Another one is lack of support. So having a support network of friends or family can make it easier to establish a new habit. Without the support, it can be challenging to stay committed. So you really want to make sure you are surrounding yourself with people that can support what it is you want to do. Another thing that comes up is insufficient planning, failing to plan out the steps and resources necessary for the desired habit. That can lead to setbacks as well. Another one is your mindset, and that could be a negative mindset, an all or nothing mindset, or issues that come up too. I think one of the most important ones that it isn't always talked about is an identity conflict. And so it's when a new habit that you want to form really conflicts with who you are as an individual. It conflicts with your self-image, the identity that you provide yourself. And so that may really cause a struggle when you're looking to reconcile the two, and it makes it difficult sometimes to adapt the new habit. I'm looking at that one in particular. There's a few that I'll pull out a few tips for. One, a negative mindset. You really want to practice positive self-talk and use affirmations. You want to surround yourself with positive influences, practice gratitude and focus on your successes. And, just consider just that gratitude practice and things that you can do to reinforce that. Fear of change. If that's something that you deal with, then identify and challenge the negative beliefs or assumptions about the new habit, about what that change is going to be. Start with small changes to build your confidence and familiarity with that new habit, and then focus on the benefits of that change and use positive affirmations to reinforce your new beliefs. And in terms of having that identity conflict, it's really about reflecting on how your new habits aligns with your values, your long-term goals, and reassess your self-image and identify any limiting beliefs. It is so important to identify those limiting beliefs and to work with a coach or work with someone to help you overcome those limiting beliefs, because that's going to help you really gradually incorporate that new habit into the new concept that you have for yourself. And seek support from others as well, from people that are in your circle. It's not easy to form new habits. And so it's simple, but not easy. It's simple by starting small. It's simple taking some of the steps that we've talked about in last week's episode and this week's episode, but it's not easy. It's not easy. And if you find yourself needing some additional support, get in contact with me. Reach out to the Engineer Your Success community. There's a link to schedule a complimentary coaching session in the show notes. Click that link, schedule a session, and get the help that you need. Click that link, schedule a session, so you can develop the plan to live the life that you want, where you're winning at work and at home. So by implementing some of these strategies that we've discussed, starting small, focusing on consistency, and overcoming these common challenges, you can create lasting habits that can propel you towards your goals and the life that you want. Reflect on your own habits and consider incorporating these strategies into your daily routine. I'm going to end this podcast like I end every podcast, and that's this. Many people know what to do. Fewer people know how to do it. And there's a select group of people that actually follow through, do it, and live the life of their dreams by implementing the things that you've heard on this podcast. You are part of that select few. Be great this week. Thanks.